They had turned a green Dodge van into a trap, and now, their latest victim lay in the snow along Highway 88 near Lake Tahoe. Beside it lay the body of 22-year-old Vanessa Sampson. She had been missing for 2 days. She was bound at the wrists, silenced, and held with a rope around her neck. The marks on her skin and the objects later recovered showed the harm had been deliberate, planned well before that morning. By the next day, December 3, 1997, 2 names were already in custody: Michelle Lynn Michaud and James Anthony DeVeggio. Reno police had stopped their green Dodge van. Inside was a disturbing collection: duct tape, zip ties, rope, gags, and curling irons altered for pain rather than styling hair. There was also clothing, bedding, and personal items belonging to Vanessa. Michaud, 41, had grown up in California, living an unstable adult life with short-term jobs and strained relationships. She had children from prior partners, including a teenage daughter who would later be named in court as a victim. DeVeggio, 36, also from California, had a record including a prior conviction in Reno for a non-consensual contact offense. He was on parole when they met. Together, prosecutors said, they became a predatory partnership. Their path to that snowy roadside had begun the year before. Michaud and DeVeggio met in 1996, and he moved into her Sacramento home almost immediately. By August 1997, she'd been forced to leave, and the pair began living out of the van, stripping the interior so there was space to restrain victims. Court records later described it as a mobile assault chamber. Between early and late 1997, they targeted multiple victims. In September, they took a 20-year-old Reno college student. There were also reports involving Michaud's daughter, her daughter's friend, and 2 women known only as Christina and Amy. These cases were never formally charged but were admitted in court to show a clear pattern. On the morning of December 2, Vanessa was walking to work in Pleasanton. DeVeggio grabbed her, forcing her into the van while Michaud drove. In Sacramento, Michaud cashed a $538 welfare check before they headed east toward Lake Tahoe. Vanessa was restrained, unable to call for help, and subjected to repeated harm with modified curling irons. She was later discovered in the snow off Highway 88. The investigation moved quickly. Surveillance footage showed the van in the area. Evidence from Vanessa's body matched items found in the vehicle. When police stopped Michaud and DeVeggio in Reno, both were wearing new clothes, the other one stuffed in a bag with red traces. Federal prosecutors acted first. In 1999, Michaud pleaded guilty to taking the life of the Reno college student and was sentenced to about 152 months in prison. The state trial followed. In May 2002, an Alameda County jury convicted her of first-degree homicide, 2 counts of using force for an intimate act, and 1 count against a minor. Special circumstances, forcefully taking and use of an instrument, made both Michaud and DeVeggio eligible for capital punishment. They were sentenced to die. Michaud's appeals focused on jury instructions, evidence admission, and whether prosecutors had proven intent. In April 2018, the California Supreme Court unanimously upheld both her conviction and her sentence. Today, Michelle Lynn Michaud remains on California's row at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, with no final sentence date set under the state's current moratorium. Her partner, James Anthony DeVeggio, was also sentenced to capital punishment, but passed of natural causes at San Quentin State Prison in August 2019, ending his sentence behind bars. The next story started with a $300 debt and ended with a burning car in a remote spot, and the man inside was still alive. Valerie D. Martin was born in 1967. She lived in Lancaster, Los Angeles County. In 1999, she was convicted for possession of an illegal substance and spent 3 months in jail. By early 2003, she shared a mobile home with her partner, 61-year-old William Whiteside. Also living there were her 16-year-old son, his 14-year-old friend, and Christopher Kennedy, a man with a prior felony conviction. They used stimulant substances heavily and often discussed white supremacist beliefs. The atmosphere inside the home was volatile, and disputes escalated quickly. On February 27, 2003, Martin told the group she owed $300 to her suppliers. She claimed she feared they would come after her if she didn't pay. They began talking about stealing from Whiteside and ending his life in the process. The first plan involved Bradley Zoda targeting Whiteside in a hospital parking lot to grab his wallet. Martin rejected it, worried someone might witness it. Instead, she suggested luring Whiteside into a trap. From a nearby mobile home, she called him and asked for a ride. The idea was that he'd arrive alone, unsuspecting. When Whiteside pulled up, the group ambushed him. Court records describe severe physical harm and deliberate cruelty before forcing him into the trunk of his own car. They drove the vehicle to a remote spot, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. Whiteside was still alive when the flames took hold. The investigation quickly focused on Martin and the others after witnesses placed them together before the act. Physical evidence from the burned vehicle and testimony from associates tied all four to the act. At trial, Martin, her teenage son, his friend, and Kennedy faced charges of conspiracy for theft, unlawful restraint, and arson, resulting in a fatal outcome. The prosecution presented Martin as the central planner, the one who altered the plan to ensure Whiteside would be vulnerable. The jury found them guilty and recommended the maximum penalty allowed under California law. On March 26, 2010, Martin was sentenced to life without parole. She was sent to the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, where she remains today. Up next is a nurse, a 100-0 life insurance policy, and a plan she wouldn't let go. Maureen McDermott worked as a registered nurse at Los Angeles County USC Medical Center by day. In the evenings, she cared for a patient at home. She lived in Van Nuys, California. In April 1985, she was about 37 years old. She shared a home with Stephen Eldridge, a 27-year-old landscaper. Each held a NOR 100-0 life insurance plan. Each had named the other to receive that money. By early 1985, their relationship had turned sour. McDermott asked a coworker, Jimmy Luna, to help her get the insurance money. She offered him $50,000. She said he must use a blade so it stayed quiet. She also told him to stage it so it appeared to be motivated by hate, hoping the police would look elsewhere. Luna tried 3 times but backed out each time because he was too scared. McDermott then told him to find someone braver. In March, Luna paid Marvin Lee, TC3-0, to join the plan. On March 21, 1985, Luna and Lee went to Eldridge's home. They threatened him with a sharp weapon. They cut his body and shouted hateful slurs. Eldridge managed to escape. He was treated in hospital and survived. Even after that failure, McDermott kept planning. She spoke often with Luna about the money and whether Lee could be trusted. On April 28, 1985, Luna brought in Lee's brother Dondell. McDermott left a front window open for them. She made fake marks on herself to look like a theft had happened. When Eldridge came home, Dondell met him with a rifle. Marvin pressed on his throat. Luna cut him repeatedly. Eldridge did not survive. At McDermott's request, Luna also cut off Eldridge's genitals after he was gone. That was meant to support the false hate story. 2 months later, police arrested McDermott. She faced charges for planning and helping with the fatal act to get money, plus extra charges for lying in wait and staging evidence. On March 2, 1990, a jury found her guilty. On April 3, 1990, she received the maximum penalty under California law. In June 1990, reports said McDermott, then 42, wept in court. She said she had never harmed Eldridge and did not help anyone hurt him. She added, "I have no fear of passing away, but I do not want it to be for nothing. I did not harm Stephen Eldridge." Her case went to the California Supreme Court. In August 2002, that court confirmed her conviction. In 2003, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to review it. In later appeals, she argued the prosecution had acted unfairly by quoting Bible verses like, "Thou shalt not take life." In 2023, judges denied her request again. A 2023 report by a prison journalism project said McDermott is now in her mid-70s. She has spent 37 years under that maximum penalty. She has been moved into the general population. Now, what about the spouse who arranged a shooting in her own shop? Catherine Thompson lived in West Hills, California. She was married to Melvin Tom Thompson, a 49-year-old auto repair shop owner in Santa Monica. Tom was well known in the community for his work ethic. Catherine, meanwhile, held a life insurance policy on him worth up to $400,000. Behind the scenes, her finances were unraveling. She had taken money from her workplace and set up fake business deals to bring in extra cash. Gambling trips added to the problem. By mid-1990, the couple's marriage was strained, and Catherine's debt was mounting. On June 14, 1990, Tom was in the restroom of his shop when he was shot. The wound was fatal. Investigators later determined Catherine had arranged the shooting, hiring Philip Sanders to carry it out so she could collect the insurance payout. Her behavior afterward drew immediate suspicion. Soon after Tom's passing, she asked a friend to collect his jewelry from the funeral home. She pawned it for cash and used the money for a gambling trip to Laughlin, Nevada. Witnesses later testified that she spoke openly about how she would use the insurance money. The investigation revealed phone records linking Catherine to Sanders in the days before the shooting. Testimony from acquaintances suggested she had talked about getting rid of Tom and splitting the insurance proceeds. Detectives said the case showed clear signs of planning: the policy, the choice of location, and the effort to profit quickly afterward. In 1992, Catherine went to trial. She faced charges of first-degree homicide, conspiracy, and the special circumstance allegation of committing the act for financial gain, an allegation that allowed prosecutors to seek the harshest penalty. Her co-defendant, Sanders, was tried alongside her. On September 15, 1992, the jury found her guilty on all counts and confirmed the financial gain special circumstance. On September 28, the judge imposed the maximum sentence under California law. She appealed to the California Supreme Court, arguing her trial was unfair because she was tried alongside Sanders and claiming prosecutors had worked too closely with his defense attorney. In December 2016, the court rejected her arguments, leaving both the conviction and sentence intact. Catherine Thompson remains in state prison, serving that maximum sentence decades after the plot that ended her husband's life. Now, what drives a woman to use a samurai against her entire family? And if you find stories like these important, consider subscribing for more. The calm in Rowland Heights in August 2007 did not last. Manling Tsang Williams was about 31 at the time. She grabbed a samurai sword and struck her husband Neil while he slept. He suffered over 90 wounds. Their two young sons, Devon, 7, and Ian, 3, lay upstairs in the same room. A pillow was used to cover their faces until they could not breathe. Afterward, Manling called the police. She said she had been out shopping and came home to find her family gone. Before that night, neighbors thought their block was peaceful. Family and friends described Neil and Manling as living a happy, stable life. They had met, had Devon, then married and welcomed Ian. Some people now say an old friend of Manling's pushed her to leave Neil. That person may have influenced her choices. Investigators later explained how Manling waited for everyone to fall silent. Then she went upstairs. She first pressed a pillow over Devon's face. She stayed until he stopped breathing. Next, she climbed to Ian's bunk. She did the same with him. Afterward, she looked up her old friend's online profile. She left the house for a short time. When she came back, she chose the heaviest, sharpest sword she had. She used it on Neil. At trial, her lawyers argued she snapped after a fight. They said she had faced years of harsh criticism at home and had trouble learning. They also claimed she had been hurt by others before. In November 2010, a jury found Manling responsible for 3 counts of taking a life on purpose. They also agreed that she planned the acts in advance and did it to more than one person. The jury could not agree on whether to give her a life sentence without release or the most severe penalty. 8 jurors supported the maximum penalty. On January 20, 2012, a judge gave her the maximum sentence available. She is one of 20 women in California serving that level of punishment. The judge noted the sentence is mostly symbolic, since the state has not carried out such punishments in years. Cherie Lashroads led Cedarville Rancheria. It is a small native community of about 35 people. She managed the tribe's gas station and store. Locals said she pushed others aside to get her way. Many found her hard to get along with. She moved back to Cedarville with her brother and her young son about 20 years before. Over time, she built up her influence in tribal politics. Then her brother, Rurik Davis, took over her role as chair. This happened during a review into missing grant funds. More than $50,000 could not be traced. He also planned to remove Cherie and her son from tribal housing. Tensions in the family were high. On February 20, 2014, the tribe held a council meeting in Alturas. Its purpose was to evict Cherie and her son. At that gathering, things went terribly wrong. Rhodes pulled out a 9mm handgun. She opened fire. 4 people lost their lives. They included her brother Rurik, age 50, her niece Angel, age 19, her nephew Glenn, age 30, and the tribe's office manager Sheila, age 47. 2 more people were badly hurt. When her gun ran out of rounds, she grabbed a sharp kitchen tool. She used it against one of those already wounded. Amid the chaos, a witness covered in red managed to escape. They ran to the nearby police station to call for help. Officers arrived and found Rhodes outside, still holding the cutting tool. A tribe employee tackled her. Police took her into custody. People wondered what drove her to such an act. Some said she feared losing her power. Others thought she feared being blamed for the missing grant money. Anger, panic, and shame may all have played a part. Rhodes faced serious charges. They included 4 counts of causing fatal harm and 2 counts of trying to harm others. There was also a charge for putting a child at risk, since Angel had an infant in her lap during the shooting. Rhodes pleaded not guilty. She returned to court for early hearings. In December 2016, a jury found her responsible. They recommended she receive the most severe sentence. In April 2017, a Modoc County judge agreed. The judge imposed that sentence and added 150 years behind bars for the other counts. She was given no credit for time already served. She was also ordered to pay about $64,000 in fees. This case is extremely rare. She is one of the very few women in modern U.S. history to receive such a severe sentence for ending multiple lives in a single event. Up next is a 9-year-old home alone, and the woman who wouldn't let her live to tell. Rosie Alfaro grew up in Anaheim, California. Her father struggled with heavy drinking. Her home life was harsh. By age 12, she started using strong substances. At 14, she began trading her body for money to feed her habit. A year later, she had her first child. By 18, she was the mother of 4 and fully dependent on substances. On June 15, 1990, Autumn Wallace, then 9 years old, waited alone at home for her mother to finish work. Rosie knew the family through Autumn's older sister. She rang the doorbell and said she needed to use the bathroom. She thought no one was inside. When she saw Autumn, she panicked. She feared the girl might tell someone about a planned break-in. Desperate for cash, Rosie grabbed a sharp kitchen tool. She led Autumn into the bathroom. There, she ended the child's life in a brutal act. Reports say she struck her 57 times. Afterward, she searched the house. She took jewelry and electronics. She later sold them for around $240,300 to get more substances. Investigators asked why she did it. Rosie said Autumn had recognized her. She felt she could not leave a witness. She told them, "Something just got into me. I don't know." Later, she said a stranger had forced her to do it. No evidence was ever found to support that claim. Prosecutors and detectives said no one else was involved. In March 1992, a jury found Rosie guilty of first-degree ending of life, under 2 special conditions during a home break-in and during a theft. She was also found guilty of breaking in, stealing, and using a sharp tool. The jury first split 10-2 on whether she should receive the harshest possible sentence. The penalty phase ended without a decision. A second jury then recommended the harshest possible sentence, and the judge agreed. At 20, she became the first woman in Orange County to receive that sentence, and one of only 3 women in California in that situation at the time. Rosie appealed in 2007. The California Supreme Court reviewed her case and kept the conviction and sentence, including the special conditions and weapon use. She then tried a federal appeal, arguing that delays in the state's legal process were unfair. In 2017, a Ninth Circuit panel rejected that appeal and reinstated her sentence. Born John Julius Jacobson Jr. in 1979, Schuyler spent early years as an extra on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a short stint in the U.S. Marine Corps ended after just 15 days with an other-than-honorable discharge. Schuyler then turned to burglary. A conviction led to time behind bars. By 2004, Schuyler was out on probation. Tom and Jackie Hawks had once served in law enforcement. They lived aboard a 55-foot yacht named Well Deserved. They hoped to settle near their grandchildren one day. To make that happen, they put the yacht up for sale. Schuyler and spouse Jennifer posed as a hopeful buyer and partner. Jennifer even brought their young child aboard to seem sincere. Everyone believed they were a friendly, expectant couple. But during that test sale, everything changed. Schuyler's friendly act hid a plan to gain money at any cost. Tom and Jackie were bound, gagged, taped, and forced to sign over the yacht. Then they were tied to the anchor and thrown overboard while still alive. They soon lost their lives beneath the waves. Where did trust turn so dark? Schuyler had recruited 2 helpers, John F. Kennedy and Alonzo McChain. Both were paid to join the plot. Their loyalty was bought and sold. The truth came out when Tom and Jackie's family heard nothing from them. Schuyler's sudden purchase of the boat raised red flags. Investigators found the couple's car in Mexico. CCTV at Schuyler's home showed Tom and Jackie just before their last moments. A notary admitted forging the sale papers for money. DNA evidence tied Schuyler directly to the victim's belongings. Under pressure, McChain confessed and agreed to speak. Piece by piece, the full story emerged. Schuyler did not stop there. Schuyler lured John Jarvie to Mexico with a fake business offer. There, Schuyler slit Jarvie's throat, stole 50, and left him wounded by the roadside. Jarvie survived. In the court case, Skylar's own lawyers admitted involvement, but asked for mercy. In October 2008, the jury found Skylar guilty on 3 counts of first-degree homicide with special circumstances. In April 2009, the judge handed down the ultimate penalty. Kennedy received the same outcome. Jennifer received 2 life without parole sentences. McChain, after testifying, accepted a plea and received about 20 years. He was released on parole in 2021. In 2019, Skylar legally changed to a female identity and adopted the name Skylar Preciosa de Leon. Years later, Skylar underwent a gender-confirming procedure. Prosecutors believe the plan was always to use the victim's money to pay for this surgery. Now you'll learn how a broken promise from a fortune teller led to a tragedy. Tanya Jamie Nelson was living in North Carolina at the time of her offense. She had moved there after living in Orange County, California. For about 10 years, she met regularly with a fortune teller named Ha Jade Smith. They became close. Ha Jade was well known in Little Saigon. She drove luxury cars and wore expensive jewelry. Many people trusted her readings because they often worked. Nelson's own life was falling apart. She had tried to open a lingerie shop. Then she filed for bankruptcy. She was also involved in a long affair with her brother-in-law, George. When her money ran out and her affair ended, she blamed Ha Jade. She said the readings had not fixed her life. In February 2005, after years of looking for guidance, Ha Jade told Nelson, "Sorry, I cannot help you anymore." That answer pushed Nelson toward a dark plan. On April 21, 2005, Nelson went back to Westminster, California. She asked Philippe Zamora to join her by offering introductions to intimate partners. Once inside Ha's home, Nelson slashed Ha's daughter, Anita Vo, several times with a sharp kitchen tool. When Ha Jade cried out, Zamora also used a sharp tool on her. They covered their faces and hands in white paint, perhaps to hide fingerprints. Then they took jewelry and credit cards. Nelson and Zamora went on a spending spree. They bought new clothes and plane tickets with the stolen items. You might wonder how someone who trusted a reader for so long could turn so aggressive. Nelson had lost confidence in Ha Jade's advice. She felt trapped by money troubles and personal loss. That mix of fear and anger warped her judgment. Prosecutors said Nelson even tried to get her own son, George Nguyen, to join in her plan against her affair partner's wife. This showed how far she was willing to go. Nelson faced trial in Orange County Superior Court. The prosecution called her selfish and cold. They said she showed no remorse. On February 16, 2010, the jury found her guilty of 2 counts of first-degree unlawful taking of life with special factors. These included theft, break-in, and waiting and hiding. In March 2010, the jury recommended the most severe sentence. The court agreed and upheld that decision. Jessica Marie Han, once known as Jason Michael Han, is serving time in California while she awaits her final sentence. In early 2002, when she was about 27, she ended the life of her 2-month-old daughter, Montana. She wrapped the baby's head in tape, sealed the body in a container, and left it in a storage trailer in Arkansas. The remains were discovered after the unit's payments lapsed. This was not her first offense. In 1999, in Vermont, she ended the life of her 6-week-old son, Jason. His body was later found in a storage unit in Arizona. While in custody, she legally changed her name from Jason Michael Han to Jessica Marie Han. The sequence began with her son's passing in 1999. He was only 6 weeks old when he suffered injuries that proved fatal. His remains were stored in a unit that she and the baby's mother rented. Investigators recovered his body from that unit years later. By February 2001, she had harmed her daughter, causing skull fractures. After Montana's injury, she bound the body in plastic, placed it in a sealed container, and stored it in Arkansas. Authorities traced the baby's remains through an auction of the storage unit. In April 2002, they arrested Han and the child's mother, Chrissy Wernz, in Maine. At that time, the couple was caring for another baby who had serious injuries but survived. That child was later adopted. Han first entered a no-contest plea to second-degree charges in Vermont for taking her son's life. She received a sentence of 27 to 30 years. She was then transferred to California for her daughter's case. In December 2013, a jury found her responsible on first-degree charges, noting her prior conviction. In February 2014, around age 40, a Riverside judge imposed the highest possible punishment. Lorraine Hunter lived in Moreno Valley, California. She shared her home with her husband, Albert Thomas, and their teenage daughter, Brianna Lachine Hunter. Albert was 56 years old. He drove short-haul trucks and worked part-time as a clerk at AutoZone. Before Albert, Lorraine had been married to Alan Brown. In 1996, Alan was shot in the back in Inglewood. That incident was never solved. Lorraine received about $300 from his life insurance. During her later trial, people noticed similarities between Alan's case and what happened to Albert. Money became a major issue at home. Investigators found that Lorraine forged Albert's signature on several life insurance forms. She named herself as the beneficiary. She took out at least 3 policies worth over $1 million. She even tried to collect that money right after Albert's passing. That move raised red flags. Brianna said her mother made several attempts to harm Albert. She followed him with a gun. In the 2 months before the fatal incident, Lorraine tried 3 times. Bystanders stopped her each time. Brianna later said, "We needed to figure something out. We needed the money." That need drove her mother's actions. On the evening of November 3, 2009, the 3 went to Albert's semi-truck. Albert climbed into the sleeper berth to grab a sweatshirt for Brianna. Lorraine and Brianna sat in the front seat. As Albert knelt inside, Lorraine drew a gun she had taken from an elderly church member. She fired 4 shots into his back, 2 near his head and 2 in his upper back. His body stayed frozen in that kneeling position. They fled with help from a relative. The case went cold until that relative, arrested for another matter, told investigators about Lorraine and Brianna's role. Brianna then admitted she helped forge the insurance forms and confirmed the plan. Lorraine was arrested in 2011. She faced charges of planning and carrying out an act that led to Albert's passing in the first degree, lying in wait, and doing it for financial benefit. Brianna's testimony and other evidence proved key. In August 2017, a jury found Lorraine guilty of that first-degree offense with special factors. They recommended the maximum penalty. In December 2017, the judge agreed and declined to reduce her punishment to life without the possibility of release. The next parents went to a birthday party with a secret hidden in the back of a truck. Belinda Magana's younger son, Malaki, was 2 years old. Family members later said he was conceived through a non-consensual act, and that Magana treated him differently from her older child. Neighbors and relatives noticed she often showed little patience with him. From May 4 to May 9, 2009, Malachi suffered escalating mistreatment inside the apartment Magana shared with her partner, Naresh Michael Nareen. At one point, Nareen poured near-boiling water on him, leaving first- and second-degree burns across his body. No one sought medical help. Malachi cried in pain for hours. Nareen also struck him with a belt, and Magana was heard yelling at him instead of comforting him. In another incident, Magana grabbed Malachi by the arm and threw him onto a couch so forcefully she believed she had broken or dislocated his arm. Still, neither adult took him to a doctor. On May 9, Nareen became angry at the sound of Malachi's moaning. While Magana slept in, he struck the toddler multiple times. When she woke, she found her son wrapped in a blanket and barely breathing. Moments later, he was gone. Instead of calling for help, Nareen placed Malachi's body in a bag, loaded it into his truck, and joined Magana and her older son on a trip to a birthday party in Apple Valley. The next day, they drove into the San Bernardino Mountains and buried Malachi in a shallow grave near Lytle Creek. After the burial, they attended a family gathering at Lincoln Park in Corona. There, they told relatives that Malachi had wandered off or been taken by someone. The inconsistencies in their account drew suspicion. Detectives quickly began pressing for answers, noting the pair's lack of urgency in searching for the child. Under questioning, Magana eventually led investigators to the burial site. Search teams recovered Malachi's body, confirming the severe injuries and burns described later in court. Separate juries heard the cases against Magana and Nareen. Both were convicted of first-degree homicide, aggravated mayhem, and causing serious harm to a child, with the finding of extreme cruelty as a special circumstance. In May 2015, at age 29, Magana was sentenced to capital punishment in Riverside County. Nareen received the same sentence. Both remain on California's row. Kathy Lynn Serenana was Ricky Morales' sister-in-law. She and her husband, Raul, looked after him. Kathy was 28 when police arrived at their home in Corona, California. On December 25, 2005, their 11-year-old nephew, Ricky Carlos Morales, was found lifeless in a closet of their duplex. Raul called the police and said, "I hurt the boy, and he may no longer be alive." The medical exam showed heavy internal injuries. It also found many surface wounds that matched marks from something like an electrical cord. There were old burns from cigarettes and serious harm to his groin area. The next day, officers searched outside. They discovered the remains of the boy's 13-year-old brother, Conrad Morales, fixed in concrete near the house. Investigators believe Conrad had passed away months earlier, possibly in Washington, and was then hidden in the concrete on the Serenanas property. In court, prosecutors showed evidence of long-term harsh treatment and neglect. They said the mistreatment grew worse over time, until it led to the boy's passing away. They used entries from Conrad's journal to paint a picture of life at home, his growing frustration, pain, and weariness. The defense argued that Raul was under extreme stress and taking strong medication. They said he never meant for the boys to pass away. In the end, both Kathy and Raul were found guilty of causing both boys to pass away. The juries chose the most severe legal punishment for both. The court agreed and gave them the highest sentence available. The next victim disappeared from Las Vegas, only to reappear 2 weeks later in the most remote corner of River. Janine Marie Snyder was a young woman from Rialto, California. She was born in 1980 and was about 21 years old when everything happened. At some point in her life, she crossed paths with Michael Forrest Thornton. He used to own a beauty salon but later became heavily dependent on illegal substances. He met Janine when she had run away from home. Over time, she became his girlfriend, and later joined him in doing very harmful things to others. In April 2001, the two of them came across a 16-year-old girl named Michelle Curran. She was a high school student living in Las Vegas. Michelle went missing and was taken across state lines to California. While being held there, Michelle went through severe mistreatment. She was given harmful substances, kept tied up, and was threatened with dangerous objects. She was also mistreated in ways that deeply harmed her, physically and emotionally. This lasted for around 2 weeks. During that time, she didn't try to escape. Most likely, she was too scared, too threatened, or felt like there was no way out. She was completely isolated. Nobody came to help her, and she had no way to contact anyone. On April 17, 2001, Michelle was found in terrible condition. Her body was discovered without clothes in either a storage shed or an old horse trailer located on a remote property in the Rubidoux area of Riverside County, California. It was clear she had been hurt badly. In the end, it was Janine who carried out the final act. But she didn't do it on her own. She was following direct instructions from Thornton. While Michelle was restrained, Janine came up close and used a weapon on her. That moment revealed just how far Janine had gone in this situation. Soon after Michelle's body was found, both Janine and Thornton were taken into custody. They were charged with several very serious offenses. These included unlawfully taking someone, causing long-term physical and emotional harm, and breaking into a place with bad intentions. They were tried separately in court. 2 different juries listened to all the details. In March 2006, both were found guilty. Janine was convicted not just for her actions but also for the way she worked together with Thornton. Her charges included serious bodily harm, unlawful restraint, and being involved in unwanted acts. Additional charges involved using a weapon and being responsible for causing deep injuries. A second part of the trial was held to decide the punishment. In June 2006, the jury made up of 6 men and 6 women decided that both Janine and Thornton should receive the highest sentence possible under the law. In September 2006, Judge Paul Zellerbach made that sentence official. Janine was given a sentence that meant she would never leave prison. It was the result of her role in what happened to Michelle, someone still so young, whose life was taken away far too soon. Cynthia Lynn Kaufman was born in 1962 in St. Louis, Missouri. Her childhood was unstable. Her father left the family when she was young. Her mother struggled to care for the children and at one point even tried to give them away. By the time Cynthia was 18, she got married and had a child. But that marriage didn't last long. Later, she moved to the western United States. There, she met James Gregory Marlowe. He had just been released from jail. The two of them quickly became close. They started using heavy substances together, got married, and soon became involved in a string of harmful acts that spread across California and maybe even into other states. In the fall of 1986, from October to November, Cynthia and James were accused of targeting 4 different women. The first was Sandra Neary, 32 years old, from Costa Mesa. She disappeared on October 11. Next was Pamela Simmons, 35, from Arizona. That happened on October 28. Then came Corinna Novus, a 20-year-old from Redlands. She vanished on November 7. Finally, 19-year-old Lionel Murray from Huntington Beach was last seen on November 12. Just 2 days later, on November 14, 1986, Both Cynthia and James were arrested. After being taken into custody, Cynthia admitted to being involved. However, she said she wasn't acting on her own. She claimed James was extremely controlling. According to her, he hurt her, didn't let her eat properly, and made her believe she had no way out. Why didn't she leave? Cynthia said she was in love with him but also feared for her life. She believed James would hurt her if she ever tried to escape. This mix of fear and emotional attachment painted a complicated picture. She wasn't just a bystander, but she also wasn't in full control of her actions. In mid-1989, the case went to trial in San Bernardino. Cynthia spoke in court. She explained her part in the two losses and repeated that James had full control over her. But the jury wasn't convinced that this made her less responsible. She was found guilty of several charges. These included 2 counts of planning to take someone's life, forced abduction, forced physical acts, stealing, and breaking into a home. In 1990, Cynthia became the first woman in California to be given the highest punishment available under state law since 1977. 2 years later, in 1992, she was found guilty in another case and was given a life sentence. She is still living at the Central California Women's Facility. As for her defense, the jury did not believe her explanation was enough to excuse her actions. Cynthia said she was present and took part but didn't directly end anyone's life. Still, the court believed she had enough control to stop it or at least walk away. That led to her receiving the maximum punishment allowed. Up next is a respected doctor's wife and a devoted mother of 4. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. Socorro Susan Caro, who often went by Cora, was married to Dr. Xavier Caro. They got married in 1986. Xavier was a doctor, and she had worked with him during her medical training around 1979. The couple had 4 children. Their names were Xavier Jr., also called Joey, Michael, Christopher, and the youngest, G.C. At the time of the incident, Joey was 11 years old, Michael was 8, Christopher was 5, and G.C. was just a year old. Everything changed on the night of November 22, 1999. That night, inside their home in Santa Rosa Valley, Ventura County, something terrible happened. 3 of the boys, Joey, Michael, and Christopher, lost their lives while they were sleeping. The object used was a Smith Wesson revolver. The very next day, local officials held Socorro Caro responsible. She was accused of taking the lives of her 3 sons. She was also charged for personally using a handgun and for the fact that more than one life was lost in the same situation. In California, this combination can lead to the harshest punishment under state law. When the case began, Caro pleaded not guilty. She also added a plea that she was not mentally stable at the time. Her lawyers explained that she had been dealing with serious depression. They said she didn't remember what had happened that night. Her mother came forward during the trial. She said that Caro had been mistreated at home, though this wasn't fully explored in court as a possible reason behind what happened. Later, during the trial, the defense brought up a completely different idea. They claimed that Caro's husband, Xavier, had set her up. They said he was the one responsible. According to the defense, he harmed the children and then tried to harm Socorro to make it look like she was the one behind it all. They pointed to her injuries, a head wound, and a broken foot, as signs that she was actually trying to protect her children. Even with these claims, the jury did not accept the story. The trial lasted 9 weeks. After 5 days of thinking it over, the jury found her guilty in November 2001. They did not believe she was mentally unstable. They also didn't believe the story about being set up. When the decision was read in court, Caro was seen crying. Her mother broke down in the hallway outside. Her husband, who had spoken against her in court, was comforted by others who were present. In April 2002, a judge from Ventura County gave the final sentence. The court denied any request for a new trial. The judge said the loss of the children had been carefully planned and gave the most serious punishment allowed under California law. But that wasn't the end of her legal journey. Since the punishment involved the highest level of sentencing, it was automatically reviewed by the California Supreme Court. In June 2019, the court agreed with the original decision. There had been questions about statements Caro made in the hospital after undergoing emergency surgery for her injuries. But the court said any mistakes made during that part of the case did not change the outcome. Even years later, Socorro Caro remained in custody. She was housed at the Central California Women's Facility. Celeste Simone Carrington carried out a series of break-ins and violent acts in early 1992. These incidents took place across the San Francisco Peninsula. She had previously worked as a janitor in several of the buildings she later targeted. In January, She broke into a Dodge car dealership in Redwood City. This was a place where she had once worked. She used a crowbar to force the doors open. Inside, she took a .357 Magnum revolver, along with some bullets. Just a few days later, on January 26, she used one of her old janitor keys to get into an office building in San Carlos. Inside, she ran into a man named Victor Esparza, who was cleaning the building. She pulled out the stolen gun and demanded money and his ATM PIN. As she was leaving, she turned back and fired the weapon at him. He did not survive. Her actions didn't stop there. On March 11, in Palo Alto, she entered another building she used to clean. Inside, she came across a woman named Carolyn Gleason. Carrington pointed the gun at her and said she felt nervous and didn't want to hurt her, but then she fired at very close range. Gleason passed away on the spot. 5 days later, on March 16, Carrington broke into a medical office in Redwood City. A doctor named Alan Marks came in and caught her by surprise. The two struggled. During the fight, Carrington fired multiple times and hurt him in several areas. Thankfully, he made it through and survived. There was a clear pattern in these incidents. Carrington was targeting places where she had once worked. Things had escalated quickly from stealing to taking lives. Investigators later searched her apartment in East Palo Alto. They found several important pieces of evidence. This included the stolen revolver, Carolyn Gleason's pager and purse, one of the building keys, a page with Gleason's ATM PIN written on it, and a medical office's emergency supply kit. After being taken into custody, Carrington gave a full confession. She admitted to all 4 incidents after agreeing to speak without a lawyer present. The jury found her guilty of planning and taking the lives of Victor Esparza and Carolyn Gleason. She was also found guilty of trying to take the life of Dr. Alan Marks, along with several theft-related charges and break-ins. Many of these charges came with added weight because a weapon was used. The jury also found that multiple lives were lost and that the acts took place during break-ins and theft attempts. During the next part of the trial, the jury decided she should face the most serious punishment under state law. Her request to lower the punishment to life in prison without the possibility of release was denied. The California Supreme Court later reviewed her case. They upheld the outcome and dismissed her appeals, which had focused on the search of her home and her confession.